On this very day, 20 years ago, unless I screwed up the upload, SEGA released a little PS2 game in Japan. 20 years later, we of course still talk about it. Throughout the 20 years, there's been ups and there's been downs, but one thing that's certain is that it has been 20 years of action, drama, sadness, excitement, and most of all, fun. 20 years ago, the world was introduced to a little game series we in the West know as Yakuza. Now, because it's a special day, I'm sure there are many other people out there who will release videos celebrating the anniversary. I'll probably do history lessons and retrospective looks on the games, but because the thing I like most about the games are their gameplay, I'm going to do what a lot of these other channels won't do somehow, and talk about how each game has shaped the interactivity of the series into what it is today. To make it so that the video isn't too long, I won't be going into every element, but instead just the most important, or really just the most fun things each game has contributed to the core gameplay of the series. So of course, we begin with Yakuza 1. As this was the very first game, everything in it was new, and it obviously contributed most to the franchise. In the game, you could run around an open world and partake in all sorts of minigames and side activities, but primarily you would engage in a 3D beat-em-up style combat system. The city you ran around in was small but detailed, which fortunately meant it wasn't like a lot of empty open worlds in other games. The minigames ranged from traditional games like blackjack to a baseball minigame and a batting cage, as well as having various side quests to do, meaning if you ever wanted a break from the main game, there was plenty for you to do. The main combat consists of punching and kicking people, picking up environmental objects to use as weapons, or weapons to use as weapons, and performing super cool contextualized special attacks known as heat actions. The combat wasn't anything complex, and if it wasn't obvious from the focus of little minigames throughout the whole series, they intentionally made it simple so that way a casual player base could enjoy a mature and realistic story without having to really sweat their asses off. But despite its simplicity, it was cool, flashy, fun, and to top it all off, the game was filled with all sorts of cinematic battles that allowed you to feel like you were making your own action movie. But then literally a day before the 1-year anniversary, Yakuza 2 was released. As you'd expect from a sequel that came so soon after, this game didn't change too much. It actually set the tone for how they would handle sequels from then on, but even still they did manage to make some improvements. Most of these were things you'd probably only notice if you go straight from Yakuza 1 to 2, so it's all fresh in your memory, but an addition that was much more noticeable was the new maps that you could explore. Both within the region of Osaka, they were both smaller than the one from the first game, which also appears here, but both of these new maps of course had selections of minigames, side quests, and heads to smash into the concrete, as you'll come to expect from these games. Beyond that though, there wasn't really anything else noteworthy enough to put on the back of the box, but it was just more of what worked and fortunately less of what didn't, like any good video game sequel should be. After this was quite a revolutionary game for the series. Released exclusively in Japan was a spin-off subtitled Kenzan. It released on the brand new PlayStation 3, and so as it was a new generation of hardware, the standards would be set higher for them, and simply copying and pasting Yakuza 1 again wouldn't fly. However, as you can tell from the footage, they also went a step further and set the game in a non-contemporary setting, meaning that they would have to put in even more effort in creating new worlds and new aspects of the gameplay. But it was still the same game at its core, so we can look at what it improved. The biggest and most obvious improvement besides the graphical one is the fact that you now have a fully controllable 3D camera. In and out of combat, there were no longer fixed camera angles besides the ones that appear in action sequences or heat actions. You also could still use weapons like you normally would, but you had access to weapons that you could permanently use, that each came with their own special attacks and abilities you could unlock. This was the genesis of the fighting style mechanic that would later become a fan favorite feature of future games, but I'll get to that when it pops up. You also still had towns to explore and minigames and whatnot to experience, but there were many more areas in this game. Some of them were small, existing basically as bridges between levels, but others were the expected, detailed areas like the other two games before it. Then once again, less than a year later, we in the West got our first PS3 game with Yakuza 3. Although by we, I mean other people, because I probably still couldn't have even tied my shoelaces back when it came out. Realistically, this game was Kenzan, but now put back into a contemporary setting. Once again though, there were still some improvements. For one, the camera is slightly improved. It follows you around, controls a bit... Yeah, no, I've been doing this whole time to trick you into thinking I was making an actual video. SEGA, what the fuck is wrong with you? Now, some of you probably know why I just said that, and if you do, well, let me just say the following PSA is mostly about the elephant in the room, but it's also a bit more than that. If you haven't looked at the comments section of any RGG-related posts over the past couple of months, you probably have no idea what this is about, so let me give you the long story short. A remake of Yakuza 3 gets announced, called Yakuza Kiwami 3, and they announce, for whatever reason, they're swapping actors for Hamazaki, Nakahara, and Ryu-Kyu. It's not just their voices that's changing though, as it's also their faces. Nakahara isn't too bad, Ryu-Kyu could have been fine if they just didn't change his face, face, and Hamazaki, boy oh boy, with a stroke of genius, is now being played by Teruyuki Kagawa. Kagawa, a few years ago, sexually assaulted 2 women. He got in trouble for it, it's now stained his poor reputation forever, and it became a prominent enough issue that whoever at SEGA responsible for hiring him would have known about it when they were casting for Hamazaki, especially since it seems like he was personally picked for the role. If you don't see any problems with this so far, let me briefly explain them. 1, SEGA would have known about it. 2, literally every single Yakuza game has at least one scene of someone doing exactly what Kagawa did, which will always result in someone, usually Kiryu, beating the shit out of them for what they did. And 3, many people, understandably perplexed and disgusted by his addition to the cast, have made it very clear with a lot of text-based protesting to SEGA that they do not want anything to do with him and can't exactly in good faith support them for their stupid decision. Some people with double-digit you-know-whats have criticised the movement either because they find it annoying and don't really want to hear about it, or because they think sexual assault is based and anything Japan-related is automatically better than anything remotely sensible. SEGA have responded to the movement by not really saying anything, and then the Japanese side block, ban, delete comments, do whatever they can to make sure that no one is seen to be speaking negatively about their best mate Kagawa. At the very least, the Western side of SEGA haven't been doing the same thing as the Japanese side, but they too have not said anything really useful. Oh, but the Yakuza games always tell stories about redemption and people making amends and fixing their lives, and did you just ignore point 2 I made like 20 seconds ago? The games depict things like assault and murder as bad significantly more than they ever show an evil character redeeming themselves. And even then, pretty much any time an evil character has redeemed themselves, it almost always ends with them still dying anyway or going to jail forever. But what's more important is that these are fictional characters in fictional worlds with fictional stories. Sure, it's realistically based off real life, but it's not real. Stories are pretty much never created to give orders, but instead to convey messages. Killing is bad, but so many stories end with at least one person being killed, and that death leads to great things. Killing someone is possibly one of the worst things you can do to a person, and yet there are so many characters who have killed that aren't evil or that end up redeeming themselves. You remember when Daigo blasted the shit out of Shindo in Yakuza 2? He's killed plenty of people, and yet he's considered one of the saintest characters in the series. Meanwhile, let's look at Kanda from Yakuza 3. In the grand scheme of things, Kanda doesn't really do anything bad. He's just sort of annoying, slaps his boys pretty hard, and attempts to rise through the ranks, but he's an idiot and he fails. And yet, when he gets his head chopped off, the expected reaction from the player is shock, but not anything along the lines of, he didn't deserve that. Why is that? Is there perhaps something I've excluded? Oh yes, that's right. In his introduction, I don't know if this word gets you auto-censored on YouTube, but he R-words a woman. He is never given any chance of redemption because they know full well that someone like him does not deserve it, and they even go as far as to decapitate him. So clearly, there's some sort of underlying message from RGG Studio throughout the whole series that sexual assault isn't good, and if the very extreme chivalry displayed by the protagonists didn't make this part obvious, RGG Studio have made it very clear that they respect women, despite their portrayals of horrible acts within the games. But guys, I don't mean to alarm you, but with the whole Kagawa situation, this really happened. It's real. It's not even just wild claims. There are literally photos of him doing it, with him smiling. How could anyone want to be associated with this? Let's think about a few things to help us understand the situation better, alright? And this is directed at both SEGA and the doubters, we'll call them. The 2 women assaulted by Kagawa that we know about are 2 women we'll most likely never meet or know anything about for as long as we live. Bit hard to generate some empathy then, right? But what if he did this to your girlfriend, or your sister, or your mum, or your cousin, your daughter, your niece, your neighbor who always says good morning to you, the nice lady who works at the bakery that gives you free stuff sometimes, the girl you might have a crush on and hope to make your girlfriend? Any of those people, and perhaps it might have a bit more of an impact on you. Perhaps because of this, one of said women might automatically not trust you anymore because you're a man. Wouldn't that seem a little unfair? That the actions of one man who has no relation to you and who you could not have prevented the actions of has now given you a bad reputation just because you're a bloke? That would suck, right? Now, imagine if said man who has done this to whichever woman you're connected to, potentially damaging your reputation in the eyes of said woman, goes and gets a big job in your favorite game franchise, being proudly displayed on all sorts of marketing materials, literally headlining the trailer for the game itself, and what does SEGA have to say about it? Nothing but a very quiet, go fuck yourself. Alright, but Empathy's not a lesson taught in the Yakuza games, so obviously I can't use it to preach my stupid opinions that I only have because I'm some leftist or something. Let's look at it from another perspective. Have SEGA ever gotten rid of someone because they did some sort of bad thing? Well, yes. They have. A lot of people keep bringing up Tanimura from Yakuza 4's original actor, who wasn't actually kicked off because of his drug-related controversy. That all happened in 2016, and although he was replaced for Yakuza 4 Remastered, Tanimura existed during the era where RGG would delete every character after every game, so there was no reason for Tanimura to not return in Dead Souls 5 or as a guest in Ishin. However, an actor that did get sacked was the original actor for Hamura in Judgment. The Western release never had his face or his performance in the game, but in the original Japanese version, Hamura was played by Pierre Taki. By the way, it's pretty ironic talking about Judgment and actors causing problems. How have they not learned anything with fucking Yagami? A few months after Judgment came out, Taki got arrested for doing cocaine and even went to jail for it. As far as I'm aware, his drug use never caused harm to anyone, but obviously himself. Now, I won't go into personal details, but a large part of my life was ruined by other people doing drugs, so I'm a bit of a hater when it comes to anyone really consuming any substances that might make you act a bit erratic. And I come from a country where there is a 50-50 chance that anyone you see is addicted to meth, and of course nothing is ever really done about it. Even I can certainly say that the police going out of their way to try and get any sort of evidence on Taki after he admitted to a limited use over many years, which then led to him being jailed and everything relating to him being toppled and destroyed in a matter of days, treating him like he was the most evil man in the world, it was all certainly a little excessive. Oh, but Kagawa sexually assaults 2 women, again that we know of, only for him to get a very temporary shunning for what he did because, well, he wasn't arrested, it wasn't that bad after all, and, well, we kind of feel bad for him because he lost everything and he wasn't bothered by it or anything. It's past the statute of limitations anyway. Let's all give him back his platform and attack anyone who disagrees with what he does. Let's all give him the treatment he deserves because we can all excuse his actions because he's a good actor or something. I don't even know what bullshit excuse these people use. Japan and the Japanese people from Argentina make me laugh. Where they draw the line on so many different issues is literally always the most illogical thing imaginable. You assault a woman and cause her to have nightmares for the rest of her life and make her never trust men ever again? Ah, just a slap on the wrist, mate. I'll see you at work tomorrow, buddy. In fact, let me promote you to a lead role in my new video game. But you have a little sip of alcohol. Ooh, tastes like hops. Like 5 days before you're legally allowed to drink, and they'll straight up send Hitman from Hitman after you. The Hitman part is made up, of course, but the other part isn't. But you know what? This situation really wouldn't be as bad if it weren't for the prominent promotion of Kagawa for Kiwami 3. They're adding a couple extra scenes in Kiwami 3 that weren't in the original, but they don't seem like they'd be very long. And so as someone who has beaten Yakuza 3 like 6 or 7 times now, and as someone who has constantly rewatched all the cutscenes and recapped the story for himself several times for the sake of YouTube videos, let me tell you right now that Hamazaki is a completely worthless character. Not in Yakuza 4, mind you, but this isn't Yakuza 4, this is Yakuza 3, where Hamazaki shows up to act all sinister, does nothing, special summons the Snake Flower Triad during his main phase, who then go to do all the antagonistic shit for him, then he literally disappears until the end of the game where he shows up for a few seconds. He is not a boss, he is not in any dialogue scenes, he's not in any sub-stories, he might as well have not even been in the game. I went and counted, of the roughly 3 hours and 43 minutes of properly animated main story cutscenes, Hamazaki only appears in 4 scenes. Those 4 scenes have a total runtime of 18 minutes and 57 seconds. Look at the length of the video so far and you'll get an understanding of how long that is. In 3 of those scenes, he is the main focus. In the one he isn't the main focus, so he isn't on screen or speaking for most of it, but he is at least one of the focus points. This would mean that all of his lines would only total a handful of minutes in length. So you're telling me that SEGA and RGG Studio are willing to look past the transgressions of this man, they're willing to go against their own message they constantly exclaim with every title they work on, they're willing to potentially have their staff suffer from harassment, which fortunately has only been repeated comments and replies, but as far as they're concerned, could become much more. They're willing to harm their own reputation with their bad response to it all, and they're willing to spit in the face of their own audience and not the people who pretend to be their audience because they once saw a post on some forum and know that the protagonist is named Kazuma Kairyu, and now are actively pushing against the movement because it slightly criticizes their favorite country that would absolutely hate them because of where they're from and how they look. Trust me, I'm a white man and they even look down on me. Also that they can proudly showcase some guy they will literally only ever work with on one project and then promptly ignore him for anything in the future unless they do a Kiwami 4, and that would be it. Like, dude, They don't even give the same treatment to some of their incredibly top-tier voice actors they get. And for what reason? Because they like the movies or plays or whatever he's in? I mean, honestly, sometimes I think RGG Studio write up an entire storyboard all these cutscenes, cast all these actors, record all their scenes, package up the thing, and get it ready to ship it off before last minute someone comes in and goes, "You guys realize it's a game, right?" Oh, fuck! I forgot. Because they really just hate trying to make a game look like a game, and instead just do everything they can to make sure you're aware that they got some actors that are only famous in literally one country in their game. You want proof? It's updated now, but before it was, their website had a cast section. It included characters like Kiryu, Rikia, Mine, and Daigo, who are all important. It also proudly included Kagawa, and before the update, did not have Haruka, or the kids, or Kazuma, or Richardson, or Kashiwagi, or Date, and most importantly, didn't even include Majima, the second most famous character from the franchise, who literally just starred in his own game, and all I can say to that is, why? I'll tell you why. It's because Sega hate money. I mean, the Dreamcast is the most obvious thing to point at when it comes to Sega not really knowing what they're doing. But if that isn't enough evidence, well, allow me to explain some of the other things that have caused this rant. I have spoken up about different issues and decisions by Sega in the past, but for the most part, I have kept quiet about them or tried my best to give a reasonable approach. But god damn, they make it hard. A lot of people will probably say I'm only mad at them because I've never gotten a code for any of the games, or because I've never gotten any special treatment from them, or any promotion, or anything like that. From my own personal perspective, it is very disheartening, but from a more professional viewpoint, really I don't care, because it always means I can just say what I think, rather than what I think I should say. But my annoyance with them goes beyond that. It goes beyond the 8th of December having a pretty dog shit release, and of course this isn't too long after Director's Cut already scammed me out of $90. It's more than Pirate Yakuza being a bit boring, having an Amazon show that wasn't particularly good, passing off their merch to fancy brands who chuck their shitty logo all over everything and charge $1 billion for a shirt, and then just making their only merch acrylic stands, or nothing, locking New Game Plus behind a not very exciting DLC at launch, letting XQC be the first in the entire world to stream the full game of Infinite Wealth, releasing Gaiden 2 months before Infinite Wealth, pretending like Ishin was a remake and not a port, treating the Judgments like dog shit, especially when they had their PC ports, making post-launch DLC cost half the price of the game, only discovering the last 2 years that YouTube is actually a platform, ever working with limited run games. It all goes beyond a lot of things as someone who wants the game franchise I like to be liked by other people, but the people that handle it keep on tripping over their own shadows. The hedgehogs. I'm grateful that they've not done things like AI-generated bullshit, Mega Man, whatever those things were. They've been really good with content creators and not just copyright claiming things left and right and suing people. I mean, even their previous soundtrack publisher, Nextone, started doing claims of Yakuza 0 songs, and Pirate Yakuza then gets its soundtrack published by someone else. And as far as this series is concerned, there's never been any big promises that they haven't delivered on. Really, it's just been stupid mistakes they aren't willing to admit they made. Even if between now and when I release this, or shortly after I release this, or maybe a bit after the game comes out and they finally say something, or even better, actually do something, it really won't matter. They've already done the dumb thing of hiring the guy in the first place and then acting like everything they did was A-okay, and it doesn't matter if Japan's gonna love the guy and that Westerners are little crybabies, says the people crying that we're bullying a sex pest or whatever, because there are more than 8 billion people outside of Japan. Sega themselves recognize that a majority of their audience now exist outside of Japan. I'm not saying get more people like Danny Trejo in, I'm saying start thinking outside of your little box, Sega. Start to understand what it is that actually sells a game and makes it good, because I'll tell you, if you think it's just the actors, you already had a shitload of good ones anyway, man. Now, because of this whole thing, a lot of people are understandably going to boycott Kiwami 3 and really anything related to Sega, or at least RGG. There are obviously some people who are only doing it because they think new equals bad, because they think they're special or something, and are now using this situation as an excuse to be more fucking annoying, but there are also a lot of people who just don't want to be associated with Kagawa in any way. Unfortunately for me, I can't afford to do that because I'm obviously a Yakuza YouTuber, and if I want to do anything that won't just be a waste of time and effort, then I should grab it, because admittedly a large majority of the people who get this game probably won't even have a clue as to what Kagawa did, especially since he's going to be so irrelevant that no one's going to give enough of a fuck to look him up. But just because I own their product doesn't mean I support what they do. I have an iPhone, but I want nothing more in this world than for the entirety of Apple to explode into a billion pieces. Sometimes you just kinda have to deal with evil people running the joint, and there's not really much you can do about it. But you know what? Instead of supporting Sega, you can support me and watch my my streams and my videos and use that to satisfy your itch for Kiwami 3. Or you can just play any other Yakuza game. They're all the bloody same thing. I promise as well that I definitely don't plan to do anything funny on the day the game releases or anything. And so, on this 20th anniversary of the Yakuza series, I wish to give all of you a very hearty Ace Combat 7, Assassin's Creed Rogue, Baldur's Gate 3, Battlefield 6, the Batman Arkham games, Crysis 1, 2 or 3, Dead Space Remake and 2, Death Stranding 1 and 2, the Yellow Deus Ex games, Devil May Cry, Doom 2016, Eternal and the Dark Ages, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, Dragon's Dogma 2, Skyrim, literally any Final Fantasy, especially 16, Fire Emblem 3 Houses or Engage, Ghost of Tsushima and Yotei, Ghostwire Tokyo, God of War 2018 and Ragnarok, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, the Master Chief Collection, Helldivers 2, Hitman 3 or World of Assassination if you're not as cool as me, Infamous Second Son, Just Cause 2 and 3, any of the Kingdom Hearts games, the Metal Gear Solids and Rising, Metaphor ReFantasio, the Metroid games on Switch, especially Prime 4 because it just came out, Monster Hunter Wilds, although I think Rise is the best, don't at me, the Nier games, the Ninja Gaidens, any Pokemon game you can think of, the Resident Evil games that aren't 6, Risk of Rain 2, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, Sleeping Dogs, the Insomniac Spider-Man games, Titanfall 2, Unicorn Overlord, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, The Witcher 3, the Xenoblade games, the Zelda games, especially Tears of the Kingdom, that shit goes hard, and most importantly, Lost Judgment, because Kiwami 3 very likely still won't be as good as it. These are all games available on various modern platforms that I can safely recommend. And now I won't be seeing any of you tomorrow because I've just looked out my window and Hitman is here to say hello.